Hey folks, Tzophiyah here. Today I wanted to change things up a bit, and I'm going to be doing some solo frigate PvP in a dual prop configuration. Watch the first video in the playlist if you don't know what dual prop is. But I'm going to be flying a brand new day one alpha character, limited to just the starting skills, plus the bonus 1 million skill points you get from clicking anyone's referral link. But basically what anyone can have completely for free in the next 5 minutes if they so choose. Well, 5 minutes if you've already downloaded the Eve client, I suppose. But you get my drift, right? The reason for doing this is that I've gotten some feedback, and thank you from everyone who has reached out, whether YouTube, the Horde Discord, in-game, whatever. But yeah, the feedback that these dual prop videos haven't been so much new player friendly, but rather me showing off how much an experienced pilot can really squeeze out of T1 frigates with a max skill tune. And I disagree with that. I may be experienced, but I'm hardly elite, and you've all gotten to see firsthand how much I and my opponents mess up on the regular. Plus, skill points matter the least in determining outcomes of fights. Like, the most important factor is the fit and the matchup, mainly whether to fight or not, really. This decides the outcome of the fight, like, before it even starts, the majority of the time. It's just rock, paper, scissors. Second is piloting, and by that, I don't mean, like, microing your manual Q clicking and other fancy things, but rather just simple things like ammo selection, whether to orbit or not, and like the range to try and start the fight at, right? Remembering to launch drones, all that sort of stuff. And then only lastly do skill points affect how well you can perform at what you set out to try and do, I guess. All that being said, we have been witness to a fair number of engagements that were extremely close, where skills could tip the scales. And before obtaining the footage for this video, I hadn't actually taken out a low-skill tune for focused PvP roaming before, or at least not in a long while. So, I mean, my philosophy could be wrong if I was missing something, and it was time to see if that was the case. And I do concede there were some things that surprised me a bit, or that I had to at least adjust my approach for. But right, let's get into it, eh? The hull and fit I'll choose, the skills I'm going to select to spend my skill points on, and then see it all in action from the cockpit. This is a brand new character I've created, on a new account of course, so I can get the referral bonus. You can have as many accounts as you'd like on the same email address. Started them Caldari just for the ease of getting to Jita, skipped the tutorial, headed over to Jita 4.4, recruited myself from my main account that has Tzophiyah on it, and am now redeeming those tasty 1 million skill points. If you're creating a character on a new account, you're welcome to use my recruitment link. It's probably in the video description or Tzophiyah's bio in-game or something. But honestly, I recommend you just recruit yourself from your own other account, right? So if you ever do happen to go Omega, you get the rewards yourself. You'll notice I also gave myself 50 million IS so we can see how much we spend on skill books. And here we can see we started with 380,000 skill points already trained, give or take a few. Different factions start with slightly different amounts, but I'm not going to be going into that much detail. The first thing we need to decide on is what hull we're going to be flying. Since we can't afford to train any capacitor skills, it's going to have to be one of the attack frigate lineup so we get the reduction in capacitor usage for our tackle modules. And again, since we're going to have terrible cap, we want a weapon system that doesn't require capacitor, which leaves us with the rocket Condor and the autocannon Thrasher. Now, I think the better option is the Condor, because with rockets, we don't need to worry about our own tracking. And with our very limited skills, even with the Thrasher's tracking bonus, we're going to be hurting for tracking. However, playing around in PyFA, that's a third-party fitting program, where you can fiddle with skills as well as modules and stuff. The power grid on the Condor was simply too weak. To get everything to fit required either current router power grid rigs, which gives up your 3-second align, so you would need to train power grid management to 5, which is another 200,000 SP, 1/5 of our 1 million budget, and we just can't afford that. Now, I'm probably going to say this a lot, but just because I am limiting myself to the 1 million SP for the sake of this video does not mean that you need to, nor should you. Like, do a couple of the air career paths and dailies while training over a couple days, and then you can fly the Day 3 Alpha Condor character that's trained Power Grid Management 5. Or create your combat character and just leave it training for months and months before taking out a max alpha Condor character, right? Indeed, I do actually do this, well, the first one, and have some not quite day one Condor footage in the latter half of the video. But right, to start things off, we're going to go true 0 time spent training skills, and we're going to be flying the Thrasher. So here is the fit. We have the middle tier autocannons for our weapon system. A little bit better tracking, a little bit easier fitting. That's an important one. And a NOS to help run our tank in a small ancil. For our mids, naturally, we have dual prop, since it's the great equalizer that I love. MWD and Afterburner, and then full tackle, just cheap meta stuff. We only have a T1 damage control, because we can't train up whatever this requires for the T2. Mechanics, oh, hull upgrades 4 is needed. That's too much training for us. And yeah, in our rigs, we have a damage rig, a fitting rig, and then a polycarbon to get us below 3-second align time. Well, shortly, once we actually add our skills, we'll have below 3-second align time. All right, time to start giving ourselves some skills now. Let's start with our speed and agility, which is under navigation. So we're going to want acceleration control, which we'll actually have to buy for 65,000 ISK. Shame, shame. And we're going to maximize that for maximum MWD. We're also going to maximize our agility, which is evasive maneuvering. So we'll get that as high as we can. Navigation is also speed. And then our warp drive and high-speed maneuvering are capacitor skills. So we'll leave those ones for now. If you take a look at our agility now, we're still above 3 seconds, and we want to get below that. There is one more agility skill we can train, and it's inside of Spaceship Command, and it's just called Spaceship Command. There we go. So this gives us another 2% agility. A little bit more expensive, 37,000, not too bad. And now we're up to 3-second align time on our fitting window here. However, if you check in PIFA, it's actually 2.9987 or something like that, which still comes in the 3-second barrier, or below the 3-second barrier, right? Ticks being every second. I think. Don't quote me 100% for sure on that. I'm not exactly sure how Eve's math works for rounding at like 3 or 4 precision, but it feels like it's sub 3 to me. So that's it for speed and agility. Let's take a look at what we're missing still. We need repair systems and capacitor emission for our NOS. So repair systems, that'll have to be bought as well. We'll start just by training it to 1 so we can actually use our module, and then we'll figure out getting it better later. And then the other one was, what, emission something? Capacitor emission systems. And again, just to level 1, so that we can actually use our NOS. Perfect. And we're going to do guns in a second, but first let's just train up Minmatar Frigate to the maximum we can. This is going to give us both damage and tracking, so we definitely want it as high as possible. It's one of the most important skills that we're going to train, other than unlocking T2 weapons in just a second here. Beautiful. Small projectile turret damage and small projectile turret tracking speed. So last up is the guns. Motion prediction 3, and then we should be able to unlock the T2 guns. So we'll head over to gunnery. Gunnery, motion prediction 3. We'll be getting these ones up as well, but we need that one just for the guns at first. And then we want small autocannon specialization. That's a more expensive skill, 2 million. We can't train it yet though, because first we need our small hybrid turret. Oh, not small hybrid. Small, what are they called? Small something. I'll find it here in a second. Small projectile turrets. There we go. I swear I know how to play this game. So we need this all the way up to 5, and that's obviously going to be huge. So the way skills work is it's kind of like exponential. So you pay more, significantly more for the higher level. So like here to do level 3, we only need to spend 6,000. To do level 4, we're spending 37,000. And to do level 5, as you can imagine, it's going to be quite expensive at 210,000. So I guess that's polynomial rather than exponential probably, but you get the idea. The better skills cost a lot more. So when we're choosing which skills, getting like lots of low ones has more bang for your buck than a few high ones. But a few high ones that unlock things like T2 turrets is important. Okay, so if we look at our Thrasher, we can now fly it. Only with 63 DPS, but we have that sub 3 second align. And technically we can use all of these modules. And let's see, we have 500,000 skill points left to upgrade from here and actually make some decisions. Actually though, right before that, one other critical thing we need that I haven't even unlocked yet is thermodynamics. So I'm just going to unlock that, and then we can decide how much we want to train it up later. Ooh, 6 million-esque. This lets us overheat our weapons, and having it trained up higher lets you overheat them longer, like they take less heat damage. Thermodynamics, probably one of the most important skills in the game, at least for PvP, at least general skills for PvP. I don't know, it's important, train it. So keeping how skills work in mind, do we want to start like padding things out with like a little bit more 5% armor hit points and stuff? No, we still need to focus, right? We're active tanked. Yes, this is nice. Yes, it's only 13,000 skill points, very, very cheap, but we need to prioritize damage. Damage and damage application is our bread and butter. So let's start bumping some of these guys up. Rapid firing to level 3. Yes, please. Sharpshooter, we're not going to train because we're going to be fighting in fall off, so we don't really need optimal. And obviously our weapons don't use cap, so we don't want to use controlled bursts at all. Tracking though, yeah, I'm just going to bump these all the way up to 4. Notice already how much higher these are getting again. So we are going to be burning through skill points quickly here, right? Just don't want to make sure I don't accidentally misclick. Gunnery gives us 2%, but it's going to require a ton of skill points. So we're going to hold off on that. These guys give us 2% for relatively cheaper. So we'll max that out, I suppose. Nice. Don't accidentally spend anything on hybrid turrets, Tzophiyah. Surgical strike, I think we actually have to buy that. Oh, no we don't, it's training. No. Ruined my whole no training. Alright, let's apply the skill points there. Good thing this isn't like a formal speed run, right? How much are these each worth? 3%. Nice. Our skill points are going down so fast. I'm just going to leave this at... I'm probably going to take it all the way to 4, aren't I? Let's make sure we get our fall off up at the same time, though. And then we'll see where we're at. You can, of course, plot all of this out. Like, all of these skills have training modifiers, and you can see how much they're going to cost, and you can... Oh, yeah, okay. We're not going to spend... We can only pick one of those, essentially. So let's leave them there for now. Right, so we have 2... Actually, we could probably pick one of these, can't we? First, let's take a look at some of the other possible things you might want to train up. So, targeting signature analysis. This could be pretty important. I think I am going to train it just so I can get that lock a little bit faster and start those fights a little bit better. Target management would be really nice. Can't afford that though. Long range targeting, 5%. Yeah, leave that, I think. All right, let's get our armor up a tiny bit here now too. So repair systems. This is going to help how much we can tank, how fast our repper works. 250. Get it up to 3. I don't think I'm going to take that to 4 because I'm going to want to spend it on gunnery still, right? Oh no, thermodynamics. Shoot, almost forgot. Okay, let's get this up to 3 as well, and then we'll see where we're at. All right, 222,000. So I think we can pick one of these two. Surgical strike for 3% more damage. or 5% fall off? That's a tough one. Is this one cheaper? 149. 186. Okay, let's just go for the raw damage and save a little bit more. So now we're down to 73,000 skill points. So I think I'm done with all of the large purchases. The only thing I think I could still really spend on is repair systems, which would be, yeah, leaving me with then 36,000, and this I can just dump into sort of like quality of life. So I think I'll take long-range targeting. Whoa, we're almost done. And then, what else? Navigation, maybe actually get some capacitor here. Although we're fine on cap even with the MWD running. This helps like warping across Thera. How much does it cost? 6,000? Sure, why not? That's just not going to help our combat at all. Just ease of life. And then what else do we have? Electronic systems for propulsion jamming would lower our cap usage a bit, but it's not really necessary. We could maybe get hull upgrades up a level, but we would need 4 to get the T2. And then, yeah, as we said before, that's pretty useless. Maybe I'll just hold on to these 16,000. So if I forgot something critical, I can pop it in later. And yeah, I think this will be good to go as best we can. So if we take a look at the fit with our skills now, we're doing 81 DPS, but if we thermodynamic overheat, we are up to not quite 100. So, you know, we're doing okay though if we can get under somebody's guns. And of course, we do have hail available for us, which brings us all the way up to 137. Look at that. That's a brawler if I've ever seen one. Sub 3 second align. And we should be just like solid on cap at all times, I'm pretty sure. Especially if we have the NOS running. Overheat that guy, 1 minute. If we're having to run that constantly. Actually, I guess maybe I will train up my cap skills a tiny bit more. The tackle ones will probably be the most useful here, or at least the cheapest. Squeeze that guy on. Oh, 19,000 required, 12,000 available. All right, well, we helped our cap up a little tiny bit there. But yeah, this is what we're going to be flying. It costs 4 million-ish to fit, although I don't have ammo in there at the moment. And if we take a look at our wallet, we spent just shy of 9 million on skills. And it would be a little bit cheaper if you start off with the same faction of the ship you actually end up flying. All right, let's see it in action. So you might notice that I'm on a completely different character, Tracy Flick. I made her in the same way you just saw with the same skills, same-ish skills at least, and she never trained anymore. But I didn't think of recording going through the skill selection and that sort of thought process and recording it until well after the fact, so recreated it for you. This footage and all the footage you're going to see was also gathered from like a couple of sessions that were scattered over a month or maybe more. So it's not like I got all this action on my first day in game or anything. But Tracy never did move beyond the skill points of a first day character, so that part is still legit. For ease of access to various regions of space, what I ended up doing was staging a bunch of my dual prop slasher fits out of Thera, which, if you didn't know, is a special huge wormhole with NPC stations in it and tons of connections that a group called Eve Scout scans down for the public to use. And as you can see, I'm currently in low-sec faction warfare system, which just was on my way to my Thera connection. My only chance against this Rifter I found is to get under its guns, and in faction warfare, the majority of frigates fit an AB instead of an MWD, because they're setting up inside a Plex, or expecting to slide into somebody set up inside a Plex at 0. So really, I'm just hoping that this Rifter pilot is brand new. And for full transparency, I did warp in on them once already, where they ran away, and I got the pilot's name and saw that they were only a week old. I mean, technically at this point, Tracy was only 1 day old, but I still feel it might not be that fair of a fight. I MWD over to grab tackle, and then ABN nice and tight, if a little slowly. The Rifter doesn't seem to have any tackle of their own. So yeah, oh, there's their artillery showing itself. T2 artillery, but yeah. This is a pure PvE fit offensive plexing rifter. And I'm really just including this fight to show you who's out there and the sort of kills you can get. Here I am in Goonswarm staging, and this is actually my first ever engagement with Tracy. That Neros is absolutely baiting me, and I managed to contain myself to not take the bait for the moment. You'll notice I have some hull damage, and that is the first real difference I noticed piloting a day 1 alpha. Crashing gate while being shot at simply hurts a lot more. You're a bit slower, a bit less tank, much more likely to end up bleeding hull instead of just taking some armor damage that I can rip up. Fortunately, that Hecate misses me altogether when they aggress, and we just catch sight of an Executioner landing as I jump, which is a perfect target. A Thrasher puts a bit of a damper on my plans, but I decide to burn off, and we'll see if the Executioner follows me through and come to play a little ways off the gate where their friends can't interfere as easily. This maneuver isn't really the same as slingshotting since we both want to fight within Scram, as opposed to one wanting to be outside of it. I'm just waiting to turn back in until after we've gotten 100 kilometers plus off the gate to be out of range of support, but also not easily warpable from the gate. I manually reduce speed a bit to keep them interested, and then back to full speed for my attack. And of course, they end up being beam and point fit. Which means, actually, I just pulled off a slingshot successfully. Well, successfully is a bit of a reach as they slip out of Scram momentarily, but Afterburner on to reel them back in. Why my opponent has a NOS when they plan to fight at 20 kilometers, we will never know. ABE goes off once I'm in tight since I don't need to worry about the beams tracking me at all, and I don't want to hurt my own tracking. Here I'm actually getting a little bit confused because my hits seem okay, but I'm not doing much damage. Of course, what I'm failing to realize is that an MWD point Executioner does have a third mid and can be buffer shield fit, pretty rare on a Mar. Very lucky I went with middle of the pack thermal ammo here instead of explosive. I don't put together that it's got a shield extender at the time, but seeing several grazing shots from my guns in a row, I manually reduce speed to try and help my tracking a bit. This is just as a stiletto is landing though. Now a stiletto usually won't be able to hurt me at all, but this one has artillery. So as it starts to pull range, I go back up to full speed, and I'm considering turning on the AB, but I'm a bit worried about what it will do to my own tracking. With the Executioner down, it's time to AB over to the stiletto for an identical kill, hopefully. AB off as I establish the orbit, and we're golden. That Daredevil is out of range to warp. But now it's pinging off something. The only question is when I start trying to heat my guns again. No point trying to escape with a point stiletto on me. And I hang in there, but that is that. Interestingly, the stiletto didn't seem to have a scram, and if you watch the footage back, I think there are actually a few tiny shield reps, like it had a small booster or something, which you don't see very often. Great first ever fight though, a couple hours after creating a free alpha character. No? An easy double kill if I had the time, but I'm happy with how it went. On a max skill character, I think everything would have played out the same, but yeah, maybe the extra damage I could have applied would have let me kill both before the Daredevil arrived. It's really hard to say. You also noticed that I was role-playing a bit as a sort of semi-Tracy Flick-like character in local, and while I had fun doing so, I will say that being memorable, especially when you're flying the same fit over and over and over again, is not really a good thing if you want to win, as it greatly increases the likelihood of getting countered by people who recognize you. Here I land on a gate in a quieter bit of backwater brave newbie space, and there's a Thrasher sitting on a citadel. If it's autocannons, it kills me. If it's arty, I kill it. So I inspect its guns to see what the dealio is. And through some painful jittering, clock that it's rockin' artillery. Apparently awake too, and interested in me. I expect it to warp to 20 or something and try for the quick blap, but instead it goes to 0. Is this a basic mistake or suspicious behavior? I decide to let them aggress and then take a peek at the other side before committing myself. Red boxing with point and artillery as expected. And a sneaky, sneaky Serb landing on the other side. My hope here, as you've seen so many times before, is for the Serb to aggress, giving me a minute to go kill that Thrasher on the other side, which it is nice enough to do. Thrasher is still there, and they're slow to respawn, so I can fairly effortlessly angle my approach and then dive in for a tight orbit. No need for afterburner against artillery. I do bump off the gate a few times here, which does bring my transversal crashing down, and might give them brief windows to alpha me off. But a bit of manual piloting, and I don't ever really feel in danger here. Maybe foolishly don't feel the danger. The fit is a bit weird with the cap rig, and tank rigs really. Plus tremor and targeting range was not the right configuration. If you have the patience to roam the quieter areas of EVE, and can manage to goad the denizens there into responding, you are more likely to find players with less PvP experience. The downside, of course, being you might not find anyone, or they might ignore you, log off, sit there in a praxis or something unengageable. It's kind of less content, but potentially easier content if you can find it, I guess. This clip is more of the same, trying to isolate an arty wolf from their friends. And I want to take the time now to talk about matchups a bit more. In my first dual prop video, that big, comprehensive 2-hour one, I mentioned at some point that flying dual prop is more legit than taking out a fit that, say, has no MWD and uses a TD, TD standing for tracking disruptor. Flying with EWAR or roaming without an MWD isn't something to be ashamed of or anything, but it's a bit cheesier, right? Much less capable in general, probably going to die to bubble camps and can never catch anything. It just needs to wait for things to come to it, but super successful in a specific niche. Dual prop plays more into taking advantage of the fundamentals of EVE PvP, while EWAR is more of a sort of I win button against a very small subset of targets. However, out in this slasher, I'm also looking for a subset of targets, right? And I'm relying on them being surprised that I can get under their guns. So there is an element of inequality to it. What I like about it, though, is that I'm kind of flipping the script on players who are looking to spend disc and get easy kills with long-range, high-alpha, fast-locking ships against, quote-unquote, ignorant pilots. They think they're taking advantage of me not knowing what I'm doing, when in fact I'm taking advantage of them not knowing what they're doing while trying to take advantage of me. So I guess cheesing cheese isn't actually cheesy or something like that. As I said at the beginning of this video, most fights are decided before they begin, and that's why skill points don't play that big a part. It's rare that you get close fights between equally matched opponents who both have an opportunity for the win, where a few extra skills or super accurate flying maneuvers, the latter under Scram at least, make the difference. Of course, I almost bought the farm against this wolf because Tracy's skills lead to subpar agility and extra lengthy prop mod cycles, but you get the general idea. Right, so another trivial 50 millionist T2 kill, because I have range control and my day 1 autocannons outtrack their highly skilled artillery. Dunking on long-range weapon ships also brings me to what I found the most different about flying the Slasher on Tracy rather than Tzophiyah, and that is tracking. Tracy is only missing Minmatar Frigate 5, which gives 7.5% bonus, and Motion Prediction 5, which gives another 5% bonus, but that loss of 12.5% combined with, 20% less damage with all of those damage bonuses she hasn't trained up, It basically drops you down a tier, I feel. So in this fight, I'm fighting a Pulse Retri, which, unlike the Crusader, does not get a tracking bonus. In my Pulse Retri, I fly with a Metastasis rig and drop, just in case I run into an ABing frigate. But most people don't, and especially with a web, I should easily be able to get under their guns, even if they swap to multi-frequency. And you can see that I do, eventually, with some hairy moments, manage exactly that. The problem is, with my AB on, I'm ruining my own tracking too much. Complete misses, the occasional grazing shot, but when I try to cycle my prop off, the Retri grazes me for quadruple what I'm doing to it. I haven't even gotten into the Retri's armor yet, and with an MWD in point, it is certainly not shield tanked. I suppose technically I might be able to whittle it down eventually, but we're in the realm of did I even bring enough ammo? It can probably permatank me even with an empty Ansel armor rep, and at any time it can just disengage, wait a minute, and jump away. I decided I'll try the higher tracking ammo, but seeing those gate flashes, I decided to try and bail instead. The Retri probably would have just popped me as I attempted to spiral out regardless, but the Hugin also gets webs on me. The moral of this story is, skills might not matter that much in deciding the outcome of fights once they've begun, but they do play a role in deciding what sort of fights you can take. Indeed, you could even call into question the whole concept of an alpha dual prop slasher that can't do damage when it's orbiting under Afterburner, like fit a second web and free up a rig slot for a tracking mod or something instead, eh? I mean, I still like it, and it is useful if you run into a web, but something to keep in mind. Maybe I should have tried manually lowering my speed under Afterburner to see if I could find a sweet spot against the Retri. No, this is also why my initial choice was the Rocket Condor, right? But now time to redeem dual prop, of course. I'm setting up to bump an Atron off of this Astra. Haven't looked at its guns at all, bad Tzophiyah, though in my defense I'm thinking they're AFK, when it breaks tether to lock me up. I head in, activate all the things, horribly overshoot, and it hits me with a web. I'm still trying to get close where I do my most damage, because I'm quite worried about him calling to his 50 friends in local, when I start getting peppered by ion blasters. This necessitates rapidly pulling back until his damage drops off, and kiting him from there in full fall off. I'm slow to react, but a heated AB does push me to safety. We're now both barely hitting each other, tickling each other to death, if you will, but he doesn't seem to have a rep. So with my armor fully healed up, I head in for a quicker kill, and almost get killed myself. What was going on there? There we go. He was hull tanked, so it looked like the killing blow I went in for actually took a few blows, and I got lucky I didn't die. Dual prop definitely won me that fight, though. Dual web would still have given me range control, but he would have popped me when I was in too close, as it would have taken twice as long to pull range. So go dual prop. These last few fights of Tracy's, I'm not quite sure why I'm including them. I suppose to demonstrate that she did die a fair amount too. But there must be some lesson. Oh, okay, I know. They reinforce that it's matchups that matter, rather than just Tech 1 versus Tech 2, cheap versus expensive, small hull versus large hull, or what have you. Here I'm warping in on a Condor I had looked at earlier, and saw had rockets fit. Basically, I'm now in the role of hoping they're untanked tackle, the role I'm usually hoping other people think I'm in. The best play for a slasher is to point blank brawl it down, but obviously that is not going to work with a day one character, and probably wouldn't work with any other character flying this fit either. Next up is a Merlin. I know it has blasters, but this is also a fairly well-known, multi-decade-old player who is actually aware that Tracy Flick is on a 1 million SP challenge flying the same fit over and over. There's technically a chance for a slasher to kite a Merlin like this, but the Merlin has null, top-tier guns, perfect skills, and the Merlin brought an Afterburner instead of an MWD precisely for me. Technically, I still have range control since I have a web, but they get a cycle of heated AB off, which kept me close enough for long enough to secure the kill for them. Finally, a Punisher that also has an AB, because they've seen my kill board. Even though I completely dominate them with the web with respect to range control, by double-clicking in space and pulsing their AB, the Punisher can cause my orbit to go a bit elliptical, and they can get some hits in when my traversal drops. Plus, I need to keep my AB running, and though I do have better tracking, I'm only missing a little bit less than they are. Once I start running low on pace, I decide to try and disengage, which I managed to do quite a bit more professionally looking than many of the click and clench extractions you've seen from me before. Okay, I think that's all I'll share of Tracy Flick in the Thrasher, but I do want to introduce you to Condor the Explorer, my day 1 Alpha Rocket Condor pilot. It's technically more like day 3 or something because I trained Power Grid Upgrades 5 on her to fit the Condor while still reserving 2 rig slots for polycarbons for sub 3 align. And yep, just you shush about that now. After seeing how much footage I had for Tracy in the Thrasher, I considered saving Condora for a separate vid, but I think it fits well, and I'll keep her part short and sweet, don't worry. In terms of skill training, I'm not showing that off again. Same process except with rockets instead of autocannons, okay? And yes, Power Grid's Upgrades 5. And obviously don't train capacitor mission systems since we can't fit an Nosferatu. This core probe launcher in the top there is offline because there isn't fitting room to online it. But while out roaming, I can by offlining something else and then onlining the probe launcher. Onlining anything that's offline requires 95% cap and uses a ton of it. So you can't do it like super quickly, but when you're out of combat. Right, so the probe launcher allows you to scan down a wormhole if you get camped in, or a gas site that has ventures huffing in it, or you can do the on-grid probe bookmarking trick if it's a new system. So like, yeah, utility offline probes is something I harp on to always fit if you have an otherwise empty high slot. And you'll see in the last fight of this video why it's worthwhile to bring one even if you lose like 1,000 ships and only use it once. And 1,000 is not an exaggeration there either. But yeah, compared to the Thrasher, the Condor doesn't have a Nosferatu. It's a bit more locked into kinetic than the Thrasher is Hail and Explo. But it doesn't have to worry about tracking, right? I mean, that's so good. Always be orbiting with Afterburner on. So simple. Go dual prop Condor. First up, we have this Kestrel that has undocked. Note its velocity from the Keepstar in Brave's staging system. Looking at the ship, we can see that it is missile fit. And glancing at the pilot's history there, they had been playing for 5 years. That's around, 2,000, just under, times longer than 1 day. If the Kestrel were rocket fit, I'd obviously be outmatched. But with missiles, we'll have comparable raw DPS, and I might have a few things going for me. First up, I'm too small for Fury missiles to properly apply to, even if I'm just sitting still. And with an AB and not being webbed, which is likely because they're point kite missile configuration, if they load Fury, they're barely going to be touching me with it. Secondly, even if they're using faction ammo, they're still only going to be applying at around 50% if I can keep my speed up under Afterburner, which, unlike turrets, right, doesn't hurt my own application at all. They'll also probably be shooting EM or thermal thinking I'm shield fit, which will actually be my best armor resists. So with all of that combined, I should be able to tank them with my Ansel small armor repairer, even without paste. On my end, I can't afford to shoot kinetic into their likely shields, so I need to gamble on an EM hole or stick with more general thermal. Unfortunately, despite everything I said about how I can likely tank them, my low damage means I am worried if my capacitor will last, since I'm going to be regularly pulsing my repper and then have to leave it on after I'm out of charges. So at some point here I decide to gamble on using EM, which will likely make or break the fight, depending on if they plug their hole or not. Ideally, I'll let them tackle and shoot me here to get as much info as I can on their setup, but I want to fight them on the other side of the gate and not on grid with their stage and keep, so I jump and decide to just go for it. I want to orbit at range where my rockets still completely apply, but my speed isn't diminished at all by turning too sharply. And of course I get smacked by a wave of faction kinetic missiles. This cuts through my armor resists and means that I can now only tank while I still have pace charges. I dive in a bit closer here for reasons unknown. Maybe concerned about bumping into the gate, I don't know. But you can see my speed isn't consistently at max anymore, which is not a good thing. One volley of theirs eliminates my armor, one heated pace charge Ansel rep repairs it. Right as I'm about to hit the last of my charges, which actually coincides with the last of my cap, I do manage to get the kill. Looking at the fit, obviously I guessed wrong going with EM, which the Kestrel had an entire mid module for. Thermal would have been the best choice here. Fortunately, they only had a small shield extender, which, even with those shield rigs, wasn't quite enough to outlast me. At first I was surprised that they didn't have an MSE, that's a medium shield extender, but that's actually my own bias cropping up here. When I think Kestrel, I think Scram Rocket Kiter, which everyone fits with an MSE. Well, except for me, who does dual prop and active armor. But everybody else does an MSE. So missiles, though, require significantly more power grid than rockets. So yeah, you just can't really fit an MSE without making debilitating fitting concessions if you're going with missiles. Likewise, it should have clicked for me that Missile Kestrel is going to have 2 mids and 1 or 2 rigs for tank, or maybe damage application. But yeah, I should have guessed that they would be plugging their EM hole, because they had so many chances to do so. So yeah, I learned some things here too, but good fight for the day 1 Condor versus the day 2000 Kestrel. I've got my eye on this Ares, and like a dum-dum, I haven't checked their guns. My mind simply refuses to acknowledge that fleet interceptors can have weapons, apparently. They're more likely to be armor fit, but shield isn't unheard of in travel fits or similar, so I decided I'll stick with kinetic and stop worrying about ammo selection. The Ares warps in at 0, perfectly timed with 2 gate flashes, but then jumps through. A Caracal and a Wolf do show up, and it would have been nice to get aggression from them first, but it's too late as I've already hit jump to follow the Ares. The Ares is reapproaching, and I decide I have a reasonable chance to kill it before the Wolf gets back, even more likely if only the Caracal returns, and this is all only if they're even together in the first place. I want to orbit with AB on at the edge of my rocket application. Technically, if the Ares is railgun fit, which of course it is, because why else would it sit still and let me start the fight at 0? Yikes. But yes, technically closer is better for less tracking against rails. It's not really going to matter against rails regardless though. And staying back a little bit initially kept me safe from massive blaster damage, while being further out also lets me potentially disengage easier if I need to. There was that gate flash almost immediately after I started the fight, but it was just a shuttle. So yes, Ares taken down. I warp off like a scaredy cat, thinking about the Wolf and Caracal, but they never came in. From the fit, we can see this is a Windrunner Claw style Ares. Sub 2 second align insta-warp, and then does like, I don't know, 75 DPS at point range trying to plink at things. It does work with multiple claws because there already has such a high alpha, but this Ares can't kill anything unless it stays on grid for a while. And it feels like the Slicer is just better at that with much more DPS. But I suppose the idea of the Ares is you can just do keep it range 20 kilometers, already be faster than most things, and with all that agility to avoid being slingshot, you just keep it range and wear them down if they can't jump out. Is it that different doing something like point kiting targets that can't shoot back due to range versus scram kiting targets that can't shoot back due to range? Or tightly orbiting targets that can't shoot back due to tracking? It does feel a little bit different, point kiting, but I don't know. If the Ares had slipped out of my scram range, I would have been cooked. But landing scram on them, they're cooked. Nothing to do with skill points, right? Just the nature of the matchup and the initial engagement range, which is a piloting thing. I would now like to mention the biggest difference I found flying the Condor on Condora rather than Tzophiyah, and that is the rocket range. With max skills, the Condor shoots Rage rockets out to 8.5 kilometers 100% of the time. However, with missile bombardment and missile projection skills only at level 4, that drops to 80% of the time going 7-something kilometers, and 20% of the time only going 5 kilometers. I guess you can go ahead and Google EVE missile mechanics if the percentages there are confusing to you. Obviously, separating this Griffin from their friend and burning it down at point blank range, that's not going to matter because I'm up at 0. But the Alpha Condor is going to struggle to scram kite. And this isn't even just a day 1 issue, but an alpha issue. Pulling out past 5 kilometers, your rage damage drops by 20%, and this isn't mitigated by using the lower damage faction ammo, really. It just bumps the 20% drop-off point to 6 kilometers. You can see this happen very unintentionally by me in footage we've already watched, actually. So here I'm orbiting at 4 kilometers, as I would with Tzophiyah, to be around 6 to 7 kilometers and as far out as possible, just in case the Yocketer is bait. My launchers are firing, but the rockets aren't making it to the target, so I need to move in closer. Fortunately, this was my first fight with Condora, so I realized what was up and corrected by orbiting tighter by default for future fights. It's also probably why I went in to orbit the Kestrel even closer after getting established in that previous fight, since I was worried heating Afterburner with the Kestrel double-clicking away might start brushing up against that 5 kilometers if I was orbiting at 2.5 kilometers. So yeah, the Condor, the Alpha Condor that is, can still scram kite with rage at 7 kilometers, even a bit further if your target is trying to approach you, but you need to be aware that you're going to be losing 20% of your damage at that range for the Alpha. Similar situation to the Alpha Slasher and tracking, I suppose, except the Condor, it's easier to calculate what's going to happen and find that sweet spot. So once again, let's lighten the mood with dual prop saving the day. I've been playing gate games with this Atron and Breacher for quite a while, but they have both refused to split the party and chase me through the gate. The Atron is blasters and the Breacher is rockets. I spent quite a while thinking about any way I could justify having a chance against the Breacher, but I let it shoot me and it's using faction rockets. So even though they're EM, it would be hopeless regardless trying to break its shield tank, especially since I caught it ABing, which would have denied my rage, that little sneak. I decided the play is to catch the Atron off the gate. It's currently trying to camp one of my bookmarks and try and kill it before the Breacher can come help. Everything is looking pretty good when I notice the Arbitrator, which has been sitting seemingly AFK on the keep for the past hour, has warped in at range. Scrammed and webbed by the Atron, but dual prop should still let me get out. And it's blasters, so it won't hurt too much as I'm running. The RB apparently has TDs rather than guidance disruptors. Don't know why I didn't refit during that hour. So I can maybe turn back in on the Atron, but I suspect a flight of lights is also on the way, so best to continue to bail. I have a sudden fear that I'm pointed rather than scrammed, and as I check, my scram drops, and I reflexively hit warp. But their scram, which is probably T2, is still up, and then when it drops, I'm not ready to warp, and they're on the ball MWDing right back in on top of me. Fortunately, they don't reapply their scram before I do manage to actually click to warp out. Alright, so I'm making these videos to show off my elite piloting skills, eh? Dual prop let me extract there, and honestly, even if they had gotten their scram back on me, I would have had more chances to not fail miserably at A being away and warping off. Last piece of footage for y'all today. I'm hunting that Astero you can see on D-Scan, and having figured out what SIG they're in, am offlining my DCU for the probes. You'll also notice that I have already scanned down a wormhole and data site from earlier. Having not trained my scanning skills at all, I definitely can't get level 4 SIGs and need to reduce inward from pinpoint even for like lower levels than that. In the time it took me to scan the site, my cap regened, so back to DCU for a potential fight. And before I've even fully landed, they've abandoned their can and warped off. They haven't left system or docked up or cloaked though, and I see that they're in a site I had already scanned down, and a site that I had already warped in on to bookmark the most likely first can directly earlier. I even called the bookmark Astero spot in anticipation. I swear this isn't set up. Amazingly, they're literally MWDing right at me as I land, and then bounce horrifically off the can, destroying any chance they have to warp before I tackle them. The question is if they have a warp core stab, ECM drones, or the Astero can actually be fit as a very tough little combat ship. So I might actually have a fight on my hands, which the T2 warriors seem to indicate. This footage is actually taken about a month later than the rest, and I've apparently forgotten the range issues I just talked about, so I'm orbiting at 4 kilometers with AB on and missing 1 in 5 volleys. Fortunately, the Astero doesn't seem to have any tackle or tank, so it's not PvP fit, and I eventually take it down, and then grab the pod for good measure. Did I mention that this was during the Crimson Harvest event, with massively increased drops and the ability to loot pods for implants? Yep, that's a 1.5 billion ISK kill, with 1 billion of the loot dropping for me to carefully extract. For a day 1 skills alpha character. In a ship they just paid for many hundreds of times over. So in summary, what did we learn? Well, first and foremost is yes, skill points do matter a bit more than I thought, but only in a way that surprised me. It's not that they affect the outcome of otherwise reasonable fights, there I do stand by them being the least important factor, but rather that lower skills can force you to change your entire engagement strategy and what you can fight. Like Tzophiyah can try to take on a Crusader and a Slasher, but Miss Tracy Flick here shouldn't. She just doesn't have the tracking and other application and raw damage skills to do anything when she does get under its guns. Tracy is basically limited to targets with poor tracking, where she can afford to turn her AB off when she's in tight, so she can apply with her what amounts to only above average rather than amazing tracking. Likewise, Tzophiyah can attempt to scram kite a Tyrannus in the Condor, tiptoeing around it at 8 kilometers. Condor the Explorer, though, has to be within 7 kilometers to do any damage, and is giving up 20% of her damage if further away than 5 kilometers. And that is a pretty big ask. I mean, I guess try 7 kilometers and hope the Tyrannus only has antimatter and forgets to launch drones, and are pure gank, no tank. But yes, Condor can't really scram kite except against the shortest of range weapons, or is at best reducing incoming damage only a tiny amount, or hurting herself a bit less than she's hurting her opponents if she's further out. The takeaway here is to ensure you understand what the critical traits of a fit are for how it's flown, and make sure, if you do have lower skills, that they don't limit you from engaging in that style and behavior. The second thing I learned is that you need to be much more circumspect about taken damage. Probably a quarter less buffer tank in total when you account for shields, armor, hull. The resist skills only buff resist modules, so they're not applicable. Also slower and less agile. It's overall much easier to end up bleeding hull or even getting popped while doing things like baiting aggression on gates or crashing gates. Mainly you have to be more careful to not ever be caught sitting still. Have your props always ready to go overheated. Always be ready to jump the instant you get red boxed, etc. Speaking of heat damage, it does occur more quickly and takes ages to repair with paste, a lot of paste too. But this is something that, while I noticed it, I don't think it ever really changed anything, and was more just in the realm of annoying, similar to running out of cap mid-warp while traveling across large systems. And finally, we learned that you absolutely can go out and have lots of fun with good fights and sweet, sweet kills in a day 1 alpha 1.4-ish million skill point character. Unless you're looking for a hard mode challenge, don't do that, and instead go out in a, like a week 1 character with dozens of additional skills trained, helping you out versus what I had available. Or start training a completely free character for everything that will possibly help them out in a specific ship fit today, and then wait to take out a perfect alpha skilled 3-month character in 3 months. I might even try something like that with an Executioner pilot, since Scorch will still let them kite, but they really need those cap skills up. But yeah, whatever you go for, I've clearly demonstrated the feasibility of starting from scratch right now, so if you're interested in trying out PvP, or need some inspiration or encouragement to get back out there, well, you now have no excuse not to. Maybe you'll even make 1 billion ISK doing it. Okie dokie, that's all I've got for you today, folks. Hope you got something from it.